Welcome to the Health King's Court. Ancient wisdom, modern health. The realest health podcast in the world. We're here to have the conversations you need to hear to live a healthier, more fulfilled life. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and everything in between. We've been disconnected from reality, from nature, and from truth itself. And far too many people are suffering. But it doesn't have to be this way. On this show, we're shining light where it's darkest, exposing the lies fed to us by mainstream institutions, and finding truth as best we can. It's time to break the cycles of unhealthiness that have trapped society for far too long and set humanity free. Change happens from the ground up, starting with people just like me and just like you, healing our minds, our bodies, and our souls. There's plenty to talk about, so let's get to today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Health King's Court, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Health. I'm your host, Zach the Health King. I have a very interesting guest with me today. She is the founder of Life Transformation Solutions, a certified holistic health coach, and a trainer of Advanced Conversational Hypnosis. As someone who has a background in childhood trauma, she spent her whole life searching for a way to be happy. New age modalities were great temporarily, but did nothing in the long term. And it was, in fact, having kids that was the greatest challenge for her, but also the best thing, because they initiated a strong desire to no longer settle for anything but fast results. She needed balance, safety, and emotional intelligence. Her pursuit of a career had led her to where she was, finding hypnosis as a quick option to therapy. She didn't have time to sit around and talk about problems for years, getting nowhere. Each step she had taken in her business had led her to where she was, pursuing advanced conversational hypnosis. It has helped her tremendously in a personal way, and she wants to now extend that gift onto others. She wants the world to know that getting results can be fast, can be rapid, and she wants especially to help professionals in the mental health and wellness industry be able to execute therapy that actually helps their clients shift their mindsets and have them get positive, life-altering results as quickly as possible. That's Regina Roberti. Regina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited about this conversation because I love a lot of the language that you use in regards to mental health. It's no secret to anyone that heard that introduction that a lot of your philosophy is around speed, being fast, getting quick results. Let's make it happen. Let's not sit around. I love that. So I'm going to start by diving into that. Why is that something that you focus on, or why is it all about speed for you?
I guess speed didn't really come into play until I had my kids. And when I realized how, I don't like to use the word damaged, but that's how I felt when I had kids. And I was so fearful of screwing my kids up because of the history that I have with my family and my experience and my perceived way that things went down when I was a kid. I didn't want kids. I had no interest in having kids. And all of a sudden, this person came into my life out of nowhere. And I all of a sudden had this like third eye vision of children, 2 kids running around, chasing each other in a field. It was like one of those scenes you see, like when somebody goes off into the distance in a movie and like the sun's shining bright and the white flowery wispy things are in this tall grass and the kids are running through it, giggling and laughing. And I thought, oh shit. Here it comes. And I didn't really feel in control of it, but I knew that I had this belief around my growing up that really felt like if I have kids, I'm going to mess them up. And then I had them, and it was almost like I couldn't stop this like snowball effect of like anger and resentment and fear and uncertainty. And I was lashing out. I had pretty bad postpartum depression around my second child that led to psychosis, where I was feeling very suicidal and I wanted to take my kids with me. It was for a very brief time, but I snapped myself out of it, fortunately. And I felt like I didn't have um, the support, the emotional support that I needed from friends and family. Nobody was around. We were basically alone raising our kids. And at the time, my husband was working from like 7 in the morning until like 9 o'clock at night. I really was alone. I didn't have a car. Um, I went through this like really distraught, devastating period. And I thought to myself, like, I know I'm stronger than this. Like, there have been so many things I've been through in my life. And I know that like I need to get out of this mental space. And so I just started doing what I could to feel good. But it wasn't, it helped, but it wasn't doing what I needed it to do. That lingering depression and anxiety and like overwhelm was literally taking over my entire experience as a parent. And I kept thinking, like, they're young now, and I know I can do I like damage control later, the best of my ability, but I need to fix me now because I thought there was seriously something wrong with me. I couldn't be happy. Like I wasn't enjoying my children. I felt touched out, overwhelmed, and I felt um, like why did I do this? Why did I have kids? And why, can't I just like be happy and enjoy them like my other friends, like doting on their children, so loving, so emotionally supportive, and I'm over here like losing my mind. And so I was like, there's got to be a faster way of like getting through this. And that's why my pursuit for speed kind of came into play. I started to get very impatient with the healing process because people always say it takes time. It takes time. You just have to like work through it. And I'm like, screw that. Like, I don't want this to take time. I want to enjoy. My kids aren't going to be this young forever. I have all these ideas that I want with the mom that I want to be, and they deserve that. And so I need to pursue that. And a few things happened. Hypnosis wasn't like the first initial thing, but it was the thing that started to make me believe that I could actually experience that shift that I needed because I was seeing it in my clients. I was seeing it with my colleagues and their clients. And so speed has just become a really important aspect of healing for me.
Yeah, I love it because most people are slow. Most people are slow in doing everything, especially healing journeys. And, that said, of course, certain procedures do take time. It's not like we can necessarily always snap a finger and become healed. But I think for a large part, people can experience healing results much faster if they use the right modalities or really even give a proper due process and due dedication to it. But, it's a beautiful story. And I do thank you for sharing because I'm sure it's very relatable, perhaps for a lot of women out there. Children are perhaps the ultimate mirror. They're the
Yeah.
ultimate reflection. They're the ultimate test because, like you said, they are just an ever-present reminder of where you are at internally.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that hard example or that hard thing right in front of you of, hey, you better get this right, or someone else is now going to suffer as well. And like you said, you might be able to do damage control later, but when people have a hard time showing up for themselves in doing their own inner healing, sometimes what really pushes them over the edge is being able to be there for their child. And it's a very interesting thing. And so you mentioned it already in that, first answer right there. And I'd love to dive into it more to your comfort level. But what
Sure.
was it that brought you to the state that you were in, that you had such a state of unrest or unwellness or unease within yourself, or even in regards to having children?
Um, the first thing was my children's face. when I would lose my mind. Like the way that they looked, there's like they were the fear in their eyes when I would like just go off into a screaming tangent, like a tantrum. Things weren't going my way. I wasn't enjoying the experience. I literally was taking it out on my kids. And so when you say like the literal reflection of yourself, there was also this understanding that I don't, you know, I find that I am a very self-aware person, even in my darkest hour. And I always know where I am and what I'm doing, and the way that my mind's working doesn't necessarily mean that I have the power in those moments to cope or to process differently or to even stop the train from going off the rails. But I do have this self-awareness. And so to be able to look at my children and see the that they were freaked out in those moments, it was enough to like jolt me internally, even if I wasn't like accepting that and trying to switch gears in that moment, didn't know how to realistically. And so that's the biggest thing for me, was looking at them. But the self-awareness was like knowing that I wasn't healed and constantly saying to myself, I'm hurting my children.
Yeah.
Like that knowing was what really just forced me into the search for, there's got to be something out there that can help me.
But going back even farther, what was it that you needed healing from? Like, what was it that you kind of experienced that brought you to that state that you needed to heal from?
Okay, so let me just give you a little history. I'm one of 9 kids. My mom and dad had 9 children together. My household was filled with alcohol, lots of different people, mostly men, in and out of our home. My father's age, not that they were doing any damage to us, but it was a very unhealthy lifestyle. If you ask any of my 8 brothers and sisters about our experience as a kid, the words that we use is dysfunction and chaos and just like crazy. So the screaming, the fighting, the hitting, the emotional abuse, just my personal experiences with an overwhelmed mother, and a dad who's there but not there, not, it was a very, I'm going to say like old fashioned kind of household. Like my mom literally ran everything and my dad did like 2 things. And to the size of the house and the property and all the things that I was around, there's a lot of like the stories I could tell you about like different things. You'd be like, oh my God, like what the hell is that about? It just really left an imprint on me of, I gotta find better. I have to do better. I have to get away. And so I was the first out of 9 kids to pack up my car. I was one of the first there's only 2 of us that went to college out of everybody. Everybody else was like trade, specialties and stuff like that. But after I graduated with my associate's degree, I packed up my car and I moved to Florida from New York. And I did it all on my own with a printed map, Google map in my hand. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but I knew that I needed to get away. I needed to get away from the lifestyles, the drugs, the alcohol, the self-loathing, the self-abuse, the lack of self-love. And I just knew that I needed to be as far away as possible to try to change my experience. But when I moved, my mom always said to me, it's a Dr. Seuss quote, wherever you go, there you are. She goes, you can keep running away, Regina, but wherever you go, there you are. You're going to bring your problems with you. So if you're going to run away from them and not deal with them, they're going to catch up to you. And she was right. At the time when I moved, she had already been in recovery, not drinking, separated from my dad. And she had already started to try and like get better, healthier, and change her life. And she was doing a great job. But she was right. So I came down here to Florida and I started doing a bunch of crazy things. I worked in bars. I traveled the biker circuit. I go danced. I did other things that I don't regret. They were an experience. But when I finally started to, I think around the age of 25, have like a quarter life crisis is what I used to laughing. I used to say to my friends laughing, I think I'm having a quarter life crisis. Like, I don't know why I'm here or what I'm doing or where I'm supposed to be, but I know it's not right. And I ended up in a relationship with a cop, a long-term relationship and engaged, and that was filled with alcohol abuse and stuff like that. So I literally created that same environment for myself. And finally I was like, all right, enough is enough. Like, I need to do better. And I moved down here to South Florida to go to massage school, and massage school changed everything for me.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said, and
Yeah.
a couple notes even. The term that you just used is one that I like because I think it's a very accurate one and one that very properly describes the experience that a lot of people have in their parental figures, and that's having an overwhelmed mother, and that is often coupled with a father that is there but not there. There physically, but not actually there showing up as a father doing his fatherly or even husbandly duties.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I can relate to. And I have observed in my own and my own siblings' experience what that does to the children of that experience, because then like it's kind of a strange thing, you know. It's like there is a father figure, but like there might as well not be. And then there's a mother, but then that mother is inherently herself masculinized in her overwhelmed state and not able to show up in a feminine, nurturing, caring, mothering way. And that's not,
Exactly.
I don't even put that fault on the mother. I throw it on the father, honestly, for creating or, lacking the guidance of the household or leading the household into that kind of structure. But it's a great term, an overwhelmed mother, because in that way, it's like showing compassion to the mother that might genuinely be trying her best in that experience, and just not have the right cards to deal with, because other terms that might get thrown around for um, similar circumstances might be like narcissistic mothers, or all sorts of different phrases that get put out. But that one, it stood out to me in the sense that it's very understanding of the mother and not necessarily even a negative towards her. So that's a very interesting term.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine? Do you have kids?
I don't.
You'll see. When you have kids, like especially when they're really little, there's so much excitement and frantic energy, and like they are just you watch them and actually embody the experience of like watching them have first experiences or exciting experiences, which is a really beautiful process. But on an energetic level, like it fritzes me out. And like I get the overwhelm that I guess experienced from a child's perspective, witnessing my mother go through with like noise and just like them climbing all over you. And they're not like, my boys don't hear me when I talk. So like like feeling like you're being ignored or whatever. Like I know that these are all developmental things. Like as far as psychology goes, like I completely understand the growth process of children and the stages and like you know, the ego growing, like forming, and then like them turning into people at a certain age and getting past like learning like hurdles and things. Like I know all of that stuff, but to be in it is a totally like I could be a psychologist sitting over here and like I know it, but when I go home to my own home, it's a totally different experience, right? Like there's this dissociation from the information because you're no longer in your head, you're in your feels, like you're in your body.
Yeah.
And I'm just like the way I experience my kids, I feel like I've learned that way to experience my kids through my mother. And so when I use the term overwhelmed, it's because I can relate. to her now that I have kids. I can relate to her experience, whereas before she was just a bad mother. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I can experience what she experienced through my own experience as a mother. And so there's not as much harsh criticism there anymore, because it makes you realize once you have kids, what all of the challenges are. And like, no matter how perfect you try to be, you're never going to be. And no matter how much you prepare, you can never be prepared enough. And, the experience being a mom and the default parent and all that other stuff that you hear all over the place now, there's something to be said about it. Like, I don't want to be in the victim category anymore in my life. I was there for far too long. So right now, as I view my past and I view my experience as a mom up to this point, I can sit back and look at it objectively, and I can break it down, and I can literally literalize it, and I can understand it. But then the next day I wake up, I go through the experience again, and it's like, damn, it got me again. Got me again. This is not an easy thing. Like, it's so hard to have self-control and control of your emotions and ideal coping skills. I think the want to be the perfect parent overshadows the experience of the parenting in itself. And so that's something that I've been trying to do, is just be more understanding of my mother's experience, especially knowing she had 7 more children than I do. But giving her grace and knowing that, like, if I'm feeling crazy with 2 kids, she must have felt psychotic with 9. Like, there's no way to just blame her for anything. I have to give her props, because regardless of how I felt in those moments when she was really going out of her mind, she was a fantastic mother. She was such an awesome provider for us and supporter. And she was even that into my 20s, until I didn't need help anymore. And she never said no, and she never questioned it. And she was always coming from a loving place. But, at the time, she did not have the tools to parent. And so my perception of that experience as a child is very different from that of now, when I'm 41 years old and I almost have a 10-year-old. So it's such an interesting experience.
Now, why is it that you think your father was either unable to or chose not to show up?
Well, he was there. He was permanently at home, but he was a hoarder and a hermit, which goes hand in hand. And he still is. He rarely leaves his house. He is still at home, still collecting things. And so from my experience in the mental health realm of hypnosis, and the psychology behind it, I can sit back and go, I don't have very nurturing memories of my grandmother and grandfather on his side. So I can only surmise, I can only guess what his life was like with not very emotionally supportive parents. And I feel like there was this need for constant attention and proving of somebody's love to him, but it was always through the act of the wife, right? The wife was subservient and submissive. And that's what he expected from my mom. And he got that for a very long time. He was very strategic about the way that he spoke to my mom in front of us for the 95% of the time. And, I don't know what's true and what's not true. But as I got older, I asked my mom questions about what it was like to be with him, because we know him as we know him. But she has a different perspective of him, because, if she loved him and things were good, they wouldn't have split up after 27 years. She wouldn't have left. And so her story is that there was a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse coming, behind the scenes that none of us knew about. And I can't say that that's 100% true for certain, because I'm not her. I wasn't there. Do I love my father any less for knowing that? No. but also there's always two or three sides to every story. And I haven't had those conversations with him to get his point of view. So I'm not going to take everything to heart with that. I can only just sit back and go, wow, that sounds like it was a hard experience for you. But my father expected my mother to be barefoot and pregnant. It was a very misogynistic way of looking at having a wife. He expected us kids to do his bidding. He wanted us to do everything and anything we could for him at any given moment, which he didn't get, which made him very, very frustrated and angry. And still to this day, he has that problem. But yeah, he works on the house and he cooks food, and those are the two things that he's always done. Nothing's really changed, even since he's been without my mom since I think 2000 and I think they officially divorced in 2004 or 2005 when I moved down here, but they were separated for 9 years before then. So around 1995, I'm going to say. Yeah. So there's so much to unpack around my parents and personality types and like the desire for somebody to care for them through the act of doing everything that you want, which is very manipulative. Not considering people and not considering their feelings or asking them like what they want. And I don't think that was ever like a part of what my father, who he was as a person. He never drove me to any of my sports practices. He never came to a competition or game. So like he was there. He was physically there. He don't get me wrong. He was a very loving father. He always sang to us. He always joked with us. Like he included us in things like making food and things like that. Like we got to make sausage from scratch and we got to butcher pigs on our backyard. I'm telling you, it's crazy life.
Within the constructs of what was either convenient or entertaining or fit within like what he wanted, essentially.
Yeah, it was his way. And, he hardly yelled at us. Like he wasn't that parent. When it came to his kids, the relationship was very different than with the wife.
How about amongst, if you have brothers versus sisters, was his treatment of the males different than the females?
What's really interesting is he doted on the girls. He had bigger expectations for the boys. He taught them everything they know as far as general contracting goes, because my father's brilliant when it comes to carpentry and roofing and electrician work. He's a master electrician and plumbing. My dad is unbelievable when it comes to talents, hard worker, still doing the same work he did. But when I was like a baby, when he first bought the house that he lives in, which we grew up in, he's still there. So he taught my brothers everything that he knows. And what's funny is like, I used to have like, I don't know if this is a male thing, but like, there's this pack mentality, like alpha male versus beta male or whatever. And I remember scenes of being a kid and like watching my father, like, and my brothers like beating each other up on the floor. So there was a very different relationship with the boys than there were the girls. Like my dad never really, I think he spanked me once. I overflowed the bathtub and it leaked all over the floor downstairs and I got a good whack on the ass. But other than that, like he never put his hands on me, he barely yelled at me. And like I said, like he was very loving, but behind the scenes and with other people, with the men in the family, it was a very different situation. There's a lot of emotional manipulation that went on with him. And I think that's why his persona was the way that it was.
Interesting. Thank you for being willing to dive into that because I think it's a story that can be relatable in a lot of different regards for a lot of people. And I think it's always such a wonderful thing for someone who can relate to certain elements, at least of a story, to see someone has experienced the ramifications worked through what they might be, kind of figured out the behind the scenes of their own mentality and taken steps to successfully, or at least, be on the path to healing and moving forward. So, that could have
Really important.
as an inspiration for people. So thank you. Switching
Yeah,
gears to a bit more broad conceptual things here.
sure.
Is happiness achievable through seeking happiness? Or is happiness a secondary experience that comes only through things like fulfillment in the long term?
That's a really great question. And um, I think that when people search for happiness, it's always elusive to them.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. And when I stopped trying to search for happiness and I just started to allow myself to just make better choices for myself, choose me in most situations, rather than putting everybody before me, which is another trait that I picked up from my mom in her years of taking care of all of us, is sacrifice has come at a cost. And I think happiness is one of those things that just happens through your experience, through what you create and how you view things. It's your conclusions, your beliefs, your perceptions of your experience. And being able to enjoy yourself is something that should be easy. But for me, I had created a belief when I was young that negativity was my way to get away from everything. So I became a very negative person. So how can you find happiness when you're always negative?
Yeah.
How can you find happiness when you're always like thinking that something's wrong?
Yeah.
How
It's
can
like,
you find happiness when you're criticizing yourself constantly about who you are and where you come from? You can't. You won't ever find happiness.
yeah, it's like that kind of behavior is self-sabotaging, but it kind of gives a conclusion, right? It's
Mhm.
like when you're engaging in that type of stewing in negativity, of course, it's usually subconsciously. Sometimes we make conscious choices in that direction. It's kind of like, okay, I have an answer. I'm just a miserable person, rather than feeling lost in that pursuit of happiness. It's like an answer, even if it's a negative one, is better than being in a state of questioning. And I like to raise this question to mental health professionals or just those that like to think about these kind of things, because I think society at large is far too caught up in the pursuit of happiness. And this sets people up for failure and for eternal suffering. Because, like you so accurately said, when we seek happiness, it is elusive. It's when we, I don't want to say least expect it, but when we are doing the things in life that are bringing us into a positive path, being productive, doing things that are going to bring us fulfillment, even when they're difficult, leaning into that, leaning into the human experience for all of the ups and the downs, that we can achieve or experience happiness more accurately, because it's not really an achievement, right? That we can get a badge and say, boom, I'm happy now. You know, people like think it's some goal or some place that we can get to, and we're just gonna be happy. It's always gonna be a temporary sensation. And life is
Yeah.
always gonna have those ebbs and those flows. And until we fully comprehend that and accept that, I think we do set ourselves up to either one, dive into hedonistic behaviors that temporarily induce states of euphoria or bliss or, so-called happiness that might be experienced in those states. But then we also set ourselves up to feel frustrated and feel like there's something wrong with us when
Yep.
we're not able to experience a 24/7 state of la-di-da happiness.
Yeah, there's a fantasy that comes with the pursuit of happiness, right? Like we look around us and we make our own conclusions about what other people's lives must be like. They
Yeah.
look happy. Look at all the things that they have. Why can't I have that? Why is my life different from theirs? And so, in that comparison, are always feeling like we don't have it, we end up creating that experience as well, right? That law of attraction aspect of things, which is a very real thing.
Yeah, that's something I like to push back on a little bit because it's also super easy to say, hey, don't compare yourself to others. That only leads to suffering, blah, blah, blah. For a large part, it does. But I do think it is a natural part of the human experience as well in the law of relativity. All things are relative to each other. We're always looking and observing this world around us, whether that's other people or the environment, etc. And we cannot help but form constructs and comparisons. There's no escaping that either. So I don't like to set people up for failure and tell them, hey, never, never compare.
No. I totally agree with you. But the thing is that if you have a program put in place from when you were a child about things that you can't have or you can't achieve, right? It's the original belief. It can go a few different ways. And one of the ways is that a person becomes ultra determined to continue to prove that they can have everything that they want and they attain it. But then there's people that actually wholeheartedly believe that they can never have happiness
Yeah.
and will always look for some kind of bias experience to prove to themselves that, see, I'm never enough. I'll never have enough. I'll never have the life that everybody else has. And so that's just the way that our minds work. It doesn't mean that it's not different from person to person. It is based on, original experiences and environments. But sometimes we get so lost in our own beliefs around not being able to ever have enough or be enough that we actually perpetuate that lifestyle. And it becomes this very crazy saboteur behavior that we don't have the tools to unravel and release.
Absolutely. I'm a strong believer that people get the life that they create, whether they are creating it consciously or unconsciously. And if they're
1,000%.
unconsciously, it's usually, very unfortunately, a life that's being created out of unconscious or programs that they're carrying out unconsciously that have been instilled in them through society, through observing patterns of dysfunction within their household, and they're usually not going to unconsciously work out in their favor.
Unless they find a better unconscious payoff, right? As a child, the unconscious payoff is to break away from the family, right? It's to survive. Even if being negative is that unconscious payoff, it's doing a service to the person for survival and safety. But when you get older, typically those programs are no longer necessary because now you're not at the mercy of your family. You're not at the will of your family and the choices they make for you. You're an autonomous person. And so at that point, that program should change. But for the majority of people, that program doesn't change. That unconscious payoff stays the same. And it just continues to create more and more problems for people, whether it's relationships or money or intimacy or whatever, communication, right? We end up sabotaging ourselves from old programs that we carry with us into our future. And that's where people in the hypnotic industry can be of real service because they work on the subconscious level, but it has to be done in such a way that they're unraveling those knots with you so that you can actually break them or at least stretch them enough to create new resources and options and a new unconscious payoff that will serve you in the long haul of things. And that's what, advanced conversational hypnosis does.
That's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point, right? Because it's easy to demonize certain behaviors when those behaviors were established as natural coping mechanisms that result out of our experiences and what's going on around us. But yeah, and so perhaps that was the ideal thing for that person to do, just to even exist and continue to function. But it's about letting go of them when it is time. And so in the name of kind of breaking those knots or unpacking those knots and leaving certain knots behind, you mentioned an interesting phrase before that you can try to leave your problems behind, but they'll show up wherever you are, or whatever that was. In
Yeah,
regard,
wherever you go, there you are.
wherever you go, there you are. It's beautiful. In regards to when people kind of move away from their family home or their hometown or their home country or their home state or whatever, in seeking a better life or a healing journey, what have you. Do you think that there is some credence to it? Do you think that there is some validity to changing our environment because then we can kind of have perhaps a better opportunity to form new internal structures in a different external environment rather than kind of being around that energy of the old environment? Or is it just escapism?
I think it's another form of survival. Um, but in my own personal experience, it was something that I needed to not be in that familiar pattern of behavior that was so solidified in my experience as a child and in my household. I needed to have an experience that I created, even if it was still coming from that subconscious program or beliefs that I had when I was a child. I needed to do things differently. Now, it wasn't going to be exactly different right off the bat, but the further away that you separate yourself from those cyclical behaviors and patterns of family, the more you can see there's a norm, a different type of norm somewhere else. And so in my previous relationship with the cop, even though he was a drinker, there was such a routine in his life with family and friends. He's such a family and friend oriented person, which wasn't my experience. So I got to see a different perspective and be in that perspective for 3.5 years, which did help me shift out of the old behaviors, old paradigms and paradoxes that I had brought with me from New York to Florida. And so sometimes reliving a behavior in a different place, far away from where you came from, is enough to shake you to the point where you're like, shh, okay, it's time to change. Like, this is not working anymore. But sometimes people don't have that luxury. They don't have that awareness where they can be in that environment, that newer environment that still is the same old same, and actually become awake. They just keep cycling into the next relationship and the next relationship. And it seems to be a different person, but the same experience over and over and over again. I am a firm believer that your soul is trying to tell you through your experiences to get out of there. It's time to change. But some of us are so numb to that self-awareness that we don't grasp that opportunity when we have the chance. It's like something really uncomfortable has to happen enough for us to want to go, okay, this is literally crazy. I can't live like this anymore. What can I do to get out of this situation? What can I do to change this ability? My unconscious payoff became something entirely different in that time frame.
Yeah, it's like ideally it could be the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me experience where, like you're saying, you had this experience of, unsavory existence. Here, you get out of there, you have it again here, then it kind of is the knock on the head. Hey, it's actually you. Maybe that they created, but now you brought it here as well, and you kind of regroup and figure it out from there. But unfortunately, a lot of people go on to get fooled three, four, five, six times into
1,000 times.
yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting way that you put it, right? Because it sometimes could take that additional experiencing of the same old stuff to realize, hey, I got to do something else.
Yeah, enough is enough, right?
Enough is
There are a lot of people that do have that experience, but sometimes it's the abusive relationship. Sometimes it's the having kids. Sometimes it's what they say, you got to hit rock bottom. And then unfortunately for some other people, they hit rock bottom and they're at the worst of the worst in their life. And they still number one, don't know how to get out of that circumstance. And number two, they're so afraid to change because that's all they've ever known. And number three, they don't feel worthy enough of asking for help.
Yeah. Or they
Just
ask for help in the wrong places.
Yeah, I mean, you can attract that instance as well, but I feel like a lot of the things that happen to us are just a wake-up call. It's our soul saying, this isn't working. You're not in alignment with who you're really supposed to be. You're not in alignment with the experiences that you should be having. So let's just make this a little tougher for you to so that maybe it'll jolt you enough for you to consider that change is necessary. Something
Oh,
has to shift.
I do think we get those calls, but I do think a lot of people, hit the snooze button on it and
I miss it.
they miss that call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, along your healing journey, you said that you tried out some different new age modalities and kind of went down that path. And that's something that a lot of people, perhaps myself included, experienced. Do you want to share what that kind of experience was like? Because you said that there was some positives, albeit temporary, and perhaps you took some lessons from those, often stigmatized new age modalities that you still carry with you to this day. Like, were those experiences vital to your healing journey? Do you still carry lessons? And what was that kind of experience like? Well, what did you go through?
I'm a firm believer that every little thing that happens to you in your life and everything that you experience is there for a reason. So when I all of a sudden had this amazing epiphany, this crazy epiphany while I was with my ex to change what I was doing. I was very unhappy in the dental industry doing dental assisting. And I didn't want to go back to bartending and dancing and like all the things that I was doing. So I was sitting in a room in his house one day and I said, like, I need to get out of here. I need to find something to do with myself. What am I going to do? And I've been massaging people since I was 5 years old. It's my youngest memory. I used to get like $5 from my uncles and aunts to like massage people around the dinner table because we always had people in our house. And then when I was in sports, my teammates would always ask for massages. My ex-boyfriends would always ask for like massages. I just had this like natural ability to put my hands on somebody and make them feel good. And so I was sitting there, I was like, duh, like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I signed up for massage school. My dad's new wife is a Reiki master, like 3 times over, and a psychic, and she's well known in New York. And I was coming up on a renewal of my license. I needed continuing education credits. And so I called her and I said, listen, I need CEUs for massage. Do you give those for Reiki? And she said, no, but if you figure out how I can do that, I said, go to the NCBTMB, see if you can get approved to give CEUs. And she did, and she got it. It was like immediate. So I ended up getting Reiki 1 and 2 level certified. And then a couple years later, I ended up working in a spa called Namaste in Pompano Beach, which is closed now. But it was an incredible experience because everybody there used Reiki. I was giving it, I was receiving it. I would say Reiki helped me get cleaner internally. Like in my mind, it helped me try to find like a center of peace. I was doing new moon ceremonies, full moon ceremonies, crystal bowl healing ceremonies. I was going to like Native American drumming circles. I did a lot of stuff for over those next couple of years. And I, in the middle of it, felt so much inner peace. And I'm sure if I continued all of that, I might have been a more level-headed person when it came to becoming a mother. But those things, unless you have the right guidance, unless you're able to utilize it in a way that you can heal on a certain level, it touches the superficial aspect of things versus the deepness of things. I have a client currently right now who uses affirmations as a toxic positivity. It's something that he goes to avoid emotion that hurts. And every time he starts to feel uncomfortable emotionally, he starts doing affirmations and like becomes more and more separated from himself. We're at a really fantastic place where that's no longer a thing. He finally realizes that affirmations are only good when you're in a good place. They're only going to help you manifest what you want if you're in alignment with who you are. I was not in alignment with who I was, even through all the Reiki and the ceremonies and the circles and all the things I was doing. I wasn't in alignment with who I was at the time. I was still trying to figure out who I was sober or not as drunk as I used to be. I was still trying to figure out who I was in a relationship, another relationship that began after my other relationship, not very set, like within months of. I wasn't healed as a person. And so while it made me feel good in that moment, it was not touching the depth of the trauma that I experienced. It wasn't helping me separate myself from those experiences. It just made those experiences more loud to me.
And then what was the experience like of finding the conversational hypnosis that was ultimately kind of that tipping point of you starting to really unpack things for yourself? How did you come across it? Did you
Yeah.
dive headfirst into it? Were you a little apprehensive? What was kind of your experience like in exploring that field?
So really briefly, I was dealing with postpartum depression pretty badly for like 4.5 years after having my first kid. Like it just went straight through. I ended up finding a nutraceutical product that was all herbal, which was right up my alley because I had just finished school a couple years before that with my alternative medicine degree. And so I started using that, and that really helped me start to break away from the postpartum depression. It was the first thing that like made a difference because I might have been depleted in something or I had a lot of oxidative stress going on. And so it helped to clear me like almost instantly of like the brain fog and the lack of clarity. And through the woman that I had come in contact with about those products, she introduced me to a self-sabotage coach where I took his program. And that taught me a lot about my family history and the things that I was exposed to and the behaviors that were cyclical. And because he was using hypnosis at the end of his coaching sessions to solidify results or help his clients shift faster, I ended up going and finding the RTT program, which is Rapid Transformational Therapy with Marissa Peer. What happened then was I practiced that for a couple of years. I was receiving it, I was giving it, but I wasn't experiencing results the way I really wanted to. I was getting shifts in clarity, but they weren't going fast enough for me. And the technique was this long drawn out thing. So fast forward, somebody ended up that I gave a session to ended up finding ACH. And she wanted to repay me in exchange for my session for her. She wanted to, because she was having such a fantastic experience from the session I gave her, even though it was RTT. She wanted to return the favor with ACH. It took me a whole nother year to actually go, maybe I should look into this. And then when I started to look it up on YouTube and follow it, I thought to myself, like, this sounds amazing. I'm really interested. My personal experience receiving the session was nothing I felt out of the 30 sessions I've received in hypnosis, regular traditional hypnosis. So I thought, maybe this is where I'm supposed to go next. And I got really excited about it and I studied it. And for the last few years, I've been practicing ACH and became a trainer in it a little over a year ago. Because all of my clients that I'd been working with in the sleeping aspect of like my niches, I'm a sleep specialist. I help people who can't fall asleep or stay asleep. My clients were getting results in one session. Or I think I had 2 clients that needed 2 sessions. One of them was like 20 minutes, one was an hour. But either way, like after not sleeping and having these disrupted sleep patterns, their results were so instantaneous. And they were calling me going, not only is my sleep better, but all of these things are better too. And I was like, wow, like this is something else. And I kept searching for somebody who could work with me because I am a damaged person. And I felt like I could help so many people, but nobody could help me. And that was just this thing I was telling myself because I didn't want to change. Like I was so comfortable being uncomfortable which is it's like such a paradox to be in. That I found ACH, but I was struggling to get the results for myself because I was lying in the sessions. I wasn't actually allowing or trusting my coach to be open enough to actually shift, until finally one day I started exchanging with one person for the course of a year. Every 3 weeks we exchanged. I would get a session, 3 weeks later, I'd get another session, and I'd work on all these issues one by one. And I had done so many with her, and she was like fast tracking and I wasn't. And finally in a session, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of lying to you. She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I've been lying to you the whole time. Every time I tell you that I'm like at a place where I see the change, like everything feels good, I was like, I've been lying to you because I'm way too afraid to let this behavior go, because I don't know what is on the other side for me. This is all I know. This protection, the safety that I put into place since I was a kid, I've learned how to manipulate people the way that my father always manipulated people. And I learned how to lie through my teeth and make people believe me that I was okay, even when I wasn't. So ACH, once I finally like allowed myself to be that honest, I was able to shift up and out so fast.
This episode is brought to you by beatcancer.org. Since 1977, beatcancer.org, otherwise known as the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education, has been leading the way in holistic cancer education, offering a variety of programs as a nonprofit organization to educate the world on how to prevent or beat cancer holistically. There's far too much suffering out there from cancer, but it doesn't have to be this way. BeatCancer.org offers a variety of educational programs, many of which are absolutely free. So be sure to check out BeatCancer.org, whether you'd like to attend one of our free weekly calls and get some free education that way, connect with Beat Cancer on social media, or if you're interested in becoming a certified holistic cancer coach, BeatCancer.org has an educational program for you. And so how did it feel for you to be going through this experience of walking people through this process of healing yourself in different capacities and helping people out while simultaneously struggling on your own kind of healing and admittance and surrendering journey? Did that create any dissonance in you, or do you feel looking back that perhaps the external helping of others was even a bit of escapism from helping yourself within?
Yeah, but I think what really ended up happening was, as I was so pissed off at everybody else getting results and I wasn't, that I wasn't willing to be dishonest with myself anymore. I wasn't willing to lie anymore about what I really wanted. So while I think it was escape, like in my own sessions, I was doing everything I could to escape from the change, from the shift. But so it was escapism in its own way. But once I finally like faced my own fears, and I was able to line up my conscious want, my conscious desire, because consciously we know we need to change. Consciously, I know where I'm at. Unconsciously, I was struggling with allowing things to be different, out of fear that it was going to the new familiar was going to be uncomfortable, and I didn't like it. So I was pissed at myself. I was getting frustrated and angry because I was like, all these people are getting help, and I'm sitting here thinking that I can help all these people, but nobody can help me. Like, that's crap. That's not even true. That's not even remotely true. I can get help. I'm just not allowing people to help me because I was so used to being ultra independent. That it was almost like I wanted to do it on my own, but I didn't want to admit that I needed somebody to get me there.
And so in what stage of this process that we've covered, the vast process, did you find I don't recall if you mentioned husband or the father of your current children? Was it while you were exploring the Reiki modalities? I think it was obviously before you had it was obviously before you had children, and after you had children is when you got really deep into this conversational hypnosis. So, like, what was the formation of that relationship like? Was that a healthy and aligned thing? And what role has he played in helping you heal, if any?
So you know how earlier you were saying that your children are like this constant reflection?
Yeah.
Well, so is your partner.
Yeah.
Your partner is the aspects of yourself that you have denied. And so when you are with somebody and you're in such denial, they're constantly reflecting back to you those inner struggles. So consciously, I know that he is this very loving, supportive, well controlled person, very wise person. I've always put him on a pedestal since we met because the way that he handles the stresses of life, like I was always in awe. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you just continue to just like, I don't know, he's such a like a thinker. And like he just has the ability to look at problems from multiple like facets of life and like come to a conclusion about it. And then all of his conclusions are just fuel for like the next level in his life, right? Just propels him where he wants to go. And I was always in awe and kind of like pissed off at him about that because I couldn't understand how to be like him in that way. So he's this reflection of me. In the way that like he's the person that I want to be, but I never felt like I could become. And I'm a determined person by nature. I always am. I'm a problem solver. I'm a knowledge seeker. It's one of my coping mechanisms that I put into place as a kid was to become this highly educated person, reading lots of books, always looking for new information. But there was something about him that just triggered the hell out of me enough to keep trying to find better, trying to become a better person, trying to do more. I always said, like, if there was anybody I was going to have kids with, it would have been him. And I was right, obviously, because we have kids together. We've been together since massage school. We met 14 and a half years ago. But he triggers the hell out of me, and he constantly, I use those triggers as fuel to heal. Not to like make me go backwards. Like I always want to move forward. So he's been a big help in that way. And even when I dislike him a lot because of it, um, it just makes me respect our relationship a lot more because it just helps me to continuously be on the path of like wanting to be a better person and for not only for my kids, but for our relationship too, which is just as hard as being a parent. Relationships of that long are complicated and there's a lot of history, of working through problems, and it's hard, but it's I don't know. He just always makes me want to continue to find a different way to do life.
That's beautiful. Has he been on his own kind of healing journey? And like, does he understand kind of what you've been through? Or like, have you shared your process with him over time? Or has he kind of just been there and able to observe the results of you being on this journey? Like, well, what's the relation
I
there?
think I think all of the above. In the beginning, he was somebody that like I vented to about all of the crazy stuff, like all of my hangups on relationships, and he heard it all about my experience with my parents and my family and the life that I had and what I came here to get away from, and he's known all of my fears. Considering that I feel like I was a basket case in the first like 4 years of our relationship, he still stayed. Like he didn't use what I had told him against me. He didn't hold it over my head. He listened, he supported. And in a way, he still does that. Like he sees we've talked about this a million times. He sees a very drastic change in who I am and who I've become just in the last 4 to 5 years alone with all of this work around hypnosis. Hypnosis has changed my entire existence. Like massage, I thought was like something that changed my life. It did. Massage was like my first love. Like I really loved and appreciated the work, and the fact that it was like the easiest job I ever had, the least stressful job. And I get to walk into a room, massage somebody, and send them off feeling so relaxed, like their life didn't matter in that moment. They just decompressed and de-stressed, and they were able to leave and just feel so amazing. And so when hypnosis came into the picture, I started shifting so fast. I think it was intimidating for him because he's always been the rock, like in the whole relationship the whole time. And I think it's challenging for your partner to watch you go through so many different like phases through your transformation process and still sit there like most days he didn't know what to do with me. He's like, I'm beside myself. I don't know what to do here, but he's still here. He's still supporting. He's like, what are you going to talk about today? Like, what's the topic? And do you need help with that? And, like he's supportive. He supported me through all the crazy. So, it just goes to show you that he's that type of person that he's such a sturdy foundation for our family, to allow me to, like most couples would not have withstood the many phases of the life of Regina in the last 14 years.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so let's get a little more technical on your area of expertise, the advanced hypnosis. What makes something advanced hypnosis versus general medical hypnosis? And we'll put aside, the circus hypnosis and not.
Yeah. We don't do stage hypnosis here. So traditional hypnotherapy or hypnosis works on the symptom, which is like, let's say I'm somebody who procrastinates on everything that I do, right? So I come to you and I'm like, hey, Zach, I procrastinate a lot. I don't know why I'm procrastinating. I want to get rid of the procrastination. It's affecting my life in all these different ways. Traditional hypnosis, they relax you, they induct you into a hypnotic state right off the bat. And then they start with regression therapy, which is, on the count of 5, I'm going to take you back to a time, place, event, whatever, where you first started procrastinating. And so it takes you back to a memory, and you have that clarity around why you started procrastinating in the first place, whether it was you were a kid and somebody made fun of you, and so that made you like uncertain and insecure about doing something. And then we go back to another memory after we like clear that scene. We want to know that we've looked at all of the facts, right? All the information that's come up around that scene, why, where, how, when. And then we go into another memory that solidifies the belief that you're a procrastinator and that you can't get anything done. We're still working on a symptom. We're still working on the superficial aspect of a deeper problem. So by the time we're done in traditional hypnotherapy, all we've done is work on the surface. We haven't gone deep enough. The memories, whether they have any significance or not, we don't know. It's just all guessing for both the client and the therapist. It's just guesswork as to why the client procrastinates. Sure, you're like, wow, that memory, I don't even really remember that time and why that bothered me so much, but I guess like it shouldn't bother me now. But there's something deeper than that going on that we're missing, because that client might leave the session feeling all fancy and like relaxed and like, oh, I have clarity. And now like I have this beautiful 20-minute recording to solidify these new affirmations and beliefs about how I am not a procrastinator anymore. how I'm motivated and I'm capable and I'm dedicated and all these things, like all these positive things. But if you're trying to tell the mind what to do and it doesn't want to do it, it's not going to do it. I don't care if you listen to that recording 5 times a day for 100 days. If the underlying reason for the procrastination is not solved in that hypnotic session, something in life is going to re-trigger that procrastination. Another confirmation bias that we look for subconsciously is going to come into play, and it's going to knock us back off kilter. And all of a sudden, the things that we thought we got rid of are back again, rearing its ugly head. And actually, it's worse than it was before. I've had that experience myself personally with traditional hypnosis as the client, but I've also had that with my clients. And I mean, my voice is not terrible, but I wouldn't want to listen to my voice for an entire year. Like, it's 21 days is the homework, right? Not only that, but 90% of the people that you give a recording to, they don't listen to the recording when they're supposed to. They're supposed to listen to it for 21 days in a row. Who has that lifestyle where they can remember even to do that for themselves? So we were always running into the issue of working on the symptom and then doing affirmations on the symptom, and then the client's not following through with the work that needed to be done. There might be slight changes, but not enough that was significant. So when I got into ACH, we do not do trance on purpose. It's not our intention. We do not close anybody's eyes and walk them downstairs. We don't do language patterns. We don't do scripts. Scripts are like the rage in hypnosis. People are buying scripts for their clients before they even see their clients for a problem that's not even the problem. So ACH focuses on the premise that the client has all of the information it needs to fix their own problem. And not only that, if they created the problem through an experience in their life, they're the only people on this entire planet that knows themselves enough to actually find the solution to their problem. So that's what we work on. And so we're just literally a facilitator, a guide, right? We're looking for very specific body language information that tells us that the subconscious mind is speaking to us and telling us, go here. This is where the problem is. Keep following me down this dark hallway, because that door is going to open here eventually, and you're going to know exactly why the person is procrastinating. What is the underlying belief, the underlying conclusion, the source of where that problem came from? So if somebody says, you know, Sarah, when I was growing up with her, like, she always used to make fun of me, even though we were best friends. And she always used to tell me how bad I was at everything. Like, that's not a real reason why you procrastinate. That's an experience that just solidified a deeper belief further, basically compacted, layered this belief. It's like an onion, right? You got to peel all the layers back to get to that tiny little bulb in the center. That's where the issue is. And that is where ACH goes with every single client.
So so if you say you don't go it or bring the person into a hypnotic trance, what makes it hypnosis versus just being like advanced talk therapy? You know what I'm saying?
So we go in and out of consciousness all day long. Whenever we need to retrieve information from our memory bank, that is the unconscious. It's an unconscious experience. So everybody does trance differently. I'm not going to tell you how to do trance. You're going to do it your own way. From client to client, trance is different. Some people go in and out so fast, it's hard to grab the unconscious moment, the unconscious information. But then there are other people that go so slow into it that it's so clear what that unconscious information is. It's so easy to grasp. But then you have people who, when you're going into the unconscious information, they go in and they go right into trance right away. Yeah. So everybody, and they stay there for 20 minutes, 3 hours. Like, you're just sitting there like this, waiting for them to come out of trance. They know exactly how to solve their problem. They're in there already doing their own therapy. They're fixing their own problem. And I'm just sitting here waiting for them to come out. And every single person is different. So if you do trance differently from me, why am I going to force you to do trance my way? I'm not. I can't. Because what happens when you try to force somebody to think something, to do something, you start talking to them in weird language patterns, they're going to have this psychotic insight that goes, they're trying to mess with me, and I'm not letting them get anywhere near this unconscious information, because if they do, they're going to change my problem, and I like my problem. My problem is comfortable. I am familiar with it, and it might not be doing me any good in my life, but it is here, it is mine, and it is staying. And so ACH is like getting in the back door. It's like sneaking in, you're not caught, you catch your client unaware, and they automatically go into trance. And once they start going into their own version of trance, they can't stop the process. So it is hypnosis in its own right, but it's not hypnosis, because that's definitely not where we are focused. We're focused on digging. We're focused on following those breadcrumbs to that inner door to open. So that's how it's very different.
So as someone who has these abilities and this training and this perhaps at this point natural second nature tendency, how do you find it interacting with the general public? Do you just like automatically find yourself kind of like looking and seeing what's going on behind the scenes as you're, chatting with that lady at the grocery store? Like, is it something that you can turn off, or is it you always kind of just seeing what's going on with people?
I can turn it off. But I have to say, recently, I'm in capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts locally. I'm part of the dojo. My son is in it. My other son is about to go into it at the end of this month. And my husband is looking towards getting maybe into it in the summer. So we're going to be a capoeira family. They just had a cord ceremony where they level you up, almost like karate, where you change belt colors, right? Because you advance. And so leading up to that event, we had to sit in a room and like shred the cord ends, because with a fork, we had to like unravel the cords, which was so in alignment with what ACH is, right? I'm sitting there and I'm listening to people ask this guy who's also a student questions about his girlfriend and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sitting there just listening. And because listening is what I do when I work with my clients, I'm hearing all of this unconscious information. And so I asked him a question, and he made this like painful face. And I was like, how did that feel when I asked you that question? And he said, I felt like I got like decked in the stomach. And everybody was looking at me like so enthralled, like they were into it. And they're like, oh my God, isn't this what you do? And I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. And I just got to the point where like we were all talking to him, but I was doing my ACH kind of style questioning. And we got to a point I was like, listen, I'm going to back off. I was like, whatever. I got you to the point where you're thinking differently about your scenario and you're more aware of like what your behavior in the situation. So I'm just gonna let's talk about something else. The damage was done. Like there was no going back on thinking the same way for him. Now he has to consider his situation in a very different light, because the truth has been revealed through the questioning process. So for the most part, I could turn it off, but those opportunities sometimes come up, and it's like, it's just too good. It's just too good not to ask.
Yeah, relatable. That's funny.
Yeah.
And so something that I learned in the span of this conversation is that you, beyond hypnosis, specialize in sleep and helping people sleep better through hypnosis. Why do you think a lot of people struggle with sleep in such a degree that they need hypnosis work to start to unpack that?
It's so individual. One of my clients, and I talk about this all the time on podcasts, she was at her aunt and uncle's house. Her parents were away. her uncle was reading the newspaper and said that somebody down the street had broken into a house, and it was lucky that the people who lived there were on the second floor sleeping. It became this like alarm that went off in her head that she needed
That'll do it.
to be awake. But the problem wasn't that it was just somebody broke into the house, and thank God they were on the second floor. She lived in a 2-story house, and her baby brother, who was 5 years old at the time, had a bedroom on the first floor.
Yeah.
So she went into overprotection mode, and every night she couldn't fall asleep because her brother was downstairs. She would go downstairs and pick him up, carry him into her room so that she didn't feel scared or guilty that she wasn't on the first floor. So that went on for like 30 years for her of her life, this like panic and need to protect, right? And so she at this stage in her life, she lived in an alarmed house in a gated community, and she still couldn't fall asleep because that safety program was wired in that moment to not sleep because she was too afraid of people breaking into her home. And then I had a similar client who was a dentist who has not slept since she was a teenager. She's like pretty much around the age of 50. I think it started when she was 12 or 13. And it was another, like, there was a control thing and there was a fear of fire thing. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but there was this illogical belief around those two things. And one part of it had to do with her sister. So there's those two are similar cases, but the rest were like, I can't sleep because I'm not doing enough while I'm awake. What does that mean? I have a business I'm supposed to be running and I'm not doing enough for that business. Okay. What's stopping you from doing what you need to for the business? All these different things. Another woman worked in the medical industry. Everything was about numbers, weight, height, temperature of the room, temperature of the body. There was something about numbers that was so illogical, but it was keeping her awake every single night. And it didn't make sense. And it bled into her own weight, her own life, all of these things. It didn't make any sense. But to her, it was the thing that kept her brain going at night that she couldn't stop focusing on. So every person is so individual. It could be as deep as I don't love myself. I have no self-worth. It could be as superficial, depending on when it started in life, as numbers or, safety. So every single person is different. The problem with us as humans is once those safety protocols are put into place, unless we're ready to have a different unconscious payoff, we're not going to change that behavior. And sometimes you need somebody who has enough skills to help you see how illogical that belief is, how irrelevant it is to your current life. And so that is the only way somebody who hasn't slept in 10, 20, 30 years is going to be able to sleep, is if you take that underlying reason for unrest and just dishevelment and fear, and you help go, well, this doesn't even make sense right now in my life. Like, this has no relevance to my current experience. So why am I holding on to this? Now their brain is going, okay, I can get rid of that. And they're going to go look for different ways to fill that purpose with a new unconscious payoff, something that actually benefits their life.
Yeah, sleep is inherently a vulnerable state. It's a state of surrender. It's a state of calmness, at least, or it should be, or a state of lacking other distractions, lacking the ability to actively cope or actively kind of occupy our mind. And so it's certainly no surprise that so many people struggle with it as a symptom when there's deeper kind of unrest or unwellness within. And so I'd like for you to define the term that you've used quite frequently in the episode, unconscious payoff, for those that might not comprehend what that means. People are seeking unconscious payoffs and they need to replace one with another in order to break habits. Well, what does that mean? And why is it such a thing that we've heard so frequently today?
Well, when it comes to our survival and safety programs, there's got to be a reason why we do something. There has to be a good reason why we do something. If you have somebody who was molested when they were a child in the middle of the night, the unconscious payoff is to stay awake, because staying awake keeps them alert. It keeps them in control. It keeps them safe. It could mitigate harm, right? But yes, that's a very traumatic experience. But when they're 40 years old, they're married, they're with children, and that's not even a threat in their life. That neural pathway is wired in such a way that they have to stay awake. They're sleeping next to their husband every night while he's snoring in his bed, and the wife is not sleeping because that unconscious payoff is still such a strong program that she hasn't been able to get any sleep in 30 years. So she needs a new unconscious payoff. And what I mean by that is something else that fills that the benefit, right? There has to be a new benefit for her to not sleep. And usually the client can't find one. They can't find a new reason to not sleep. Sleep is the most natural thing that humans do. As soon as we're born, we eat, we poop, we sleep. If that's such an innate thing, then why are people struggling with getting sleep? There has to be a reason, because there's some benefit to them to stay awake. So everybody's different. The reasons are always different from person to person. What we think we're awake because of is usually not anywhere near the truth of what's keeping us awake, but it's our guesses. It's our best guess as to why. So we start medicating, and here's another layer, and we start, going to therapy, and we're not getting anywhere near the problem, the real problem. So there's another layer, and this is all these guesses as to why we stay awake. But if we find the real reason, the real benefit to being awake, which is nobody can come in this room and touch me anymore. I can defend myself. I can get away. I can run. I can't run if I'm asleep. If I'm asleep, then people have control over me because I'm very vulnerable. But if I'm awake, I'm invulnerable. I can have a knife under my pillow and I can stab somebody that comes in my room. But when you're 40 years old and married, and that's not even a possibility, it's a very rare percentage of your potential experience, it doesn't even make sense to have that anymore. What is the benefit of keeping that? There is none. And so the new benefit, the new resource, the new unconscious payoff has to be sleeping. I'm safe. I'm okay. I can sleep next to my husband. Nothing's going to hurt me. Nothing's going to bother me. There's all these different safety mechanisms external of me that are put into place. Like my husband carries, I know how to shoot a gun. The doors are locked. I've got security system. There's a gated thing with a security officer. Like there's all these different things that external of me. Everything else is out of my control. And then when I become okay with that, knowing that I've done everything I could to not have the same experience, then I can let go of that benefit, that old benefit that no longer services me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Regina, how is it that you're working with clients? Do you do strictly in-person, one-on-one consultations and work? Are you working with people virtually, online, in different things? Do you have like programs? How is it exactly that you are working with clients these days?
COVID changed everything. I don't have to work with people in person. I do have local clients to where I live, health coaching clients. I have ACH clients. I have clients all over the world through Zoom. And then my training is through Zoom. My program's through Zoom and a platform called School. So once you sign up to learn ACH with me, I become your mentor, unlimited. You pay one-time fee. You're automatically given a link to get into my program. You have resources with the community. All of the information that I've given you, I put into posts and videos. You have my previously recorded masterclass. So like you're in a program for unlimited. So every time I have a featured masterclass, you just have to show up. You don't have to pay me again. So I basically help you enhance and revolutionize your practice working with your clients. But if I work one-on-one with clients on sleep issues or health coaching, like lifestyle, stress management, diet and fitness, and just overall health from a holistic perspective, ACH is very holistic. There's no medication involved. You can work with me either on the phone through Zoom, or I have a client that I like. All of our ACH sessions are done via text, which is interesting because when you when you can spot the unconscious moments, you don't even have to actually physically see the person and like talk to them and one-to-one like we're doing. I can hear and see the unconscious moments in the words that you put on it in your text message. So I work with people on all different levels.
Now, would you recommend someone might get benefit from taking the program that teaches ACH if they themselves don't necessarily want to be a practitioner, but like want to comprehend these concepts at a stronger level for their own sake? Is that something that someone on a personal level could benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, there are tons of people who do ACH right now. I'm not going to say tons. There's only like 1,000 people that do ACH in the world, and there's only 55 of us who are trained to train other people, which is it's small numbers. It's a very new modality. It's not worldwide, like it's worldwide known because there's students from all over, but like you talk to somebody and they go, "What is ACH?" Like nobody really knows that it exists. But you could be a hairstylist, and that is basically a psychology job. You could be a bartender. That's basically a psychology job. You're always talking to people about their problems. As a massage therapist, I'm always talking to people about personal stuff. Like they tell me a lot of things. There's this trust and vulnerability of in being in the room with somebody you see on a regular basis. That if you just want to become a better communicator, if you just want to experience sessions because you're trading with people in the community and trying to hone your skill, you're going to work on issues that you have in a very different way than just traditional talk therapy. So I think there's a lot of benefit, but I can promise you this: once you start doing ACH, you don't want to do anything else. You don't want to treat people in a different way because you don't need anything else. You don't have to prepare for your clients. There's none of that stuff that you would do in traditional hypnosis is even a factor. You don't do scripts. You don't do recordings. You just work with the client quickly one-on-one and get them to shift their mindset fast. And like you literally see them 1, 2, 3 times and they're gone for good. Like I never, unless they have another problem they want to work on that wasn't touched with ACH, I don't have to see them again. So they can go on and live their life. They can have that life transformation that they were looking for, which happens a lot.
That's awesome. And so if someone would like to take advantage of those services that you just mentioned, how could they find you? Websites, socials, where is the best place to get more of Regina?
So I'm in the middle of working on my website, just updating it with all this new information that I've been doing with the health coaching and the training, because I just launched my training program in February. I've got another one coming up June 21st and 22nd. It's a 2-day, 11 to 5 Eastern time masterclass. So I just finally put on there the program itself. So you can sign up for my one-time buy-in, unlimited access to the program. You can buy that on my website right now, lifetransformationsolutions.com. My Calendly link is all over my website. So if you want to schedule a strategy call just to talk to me about what your problem is, see if we're a good fit for each other, you could schedule that consultation. That's complimentary. All of my social media is linked on the page. Follow me here. And then if you're interested in nutraceuticals, which changed my life, they were the start of the shift for me on many levels, or phototherapy patches. Everything that I do is on the cellular level as a holistic health coach. Everything starts on the cellular level. You start to heal the body at the cellular level. You can do a lot of different things after that with the body and the mind. So those links are on there as well. So everything that you would need to access me is right there on my website.
Awesome. Awesome. Regina, there's so many interesting sides to you, so many experiences that you've had that I absolutely believe that we can continue to learn from. But to end this session here, I would love to know if there's any particular message that you'd like to leave our viewers off with. If they forget everything else that they heard and just remember this last thing, what would you like that to be?
Well, I'm not going to say continue to pursue happiness. Happiness will come when you finally start doing the hard work that you need to eliminate those, previous programs that are in place that might be just creating too much chaos in your life. So I would say is, never stop looking towards finding the best version of yourself. Don't ever give up on yourself. It doesn't matter if you've had a early trauma lifestyle like mine, or if you're in the addiction phases of life. There's always information that you can access within that will help you move into a better version of yourself. So if that is something that you've always wanted, don't stop pursuing that, because it took me 40 years to get there. But I have never been happier in my life where I am now. Living more for me. There's more self-care. I'm enjoying the parenting experience like I've never had before. Always putting myself first. I'm always thinking of myself, which has made me a happier person. And I think that that's available to everybody, but you have to be willing and brave enough to face the deepest, darkest truths about yourself. I think when you're really honest about who you are, where you are, what you feel, what you've been through, there's nothing that you can't accomplish when it comes to actually attaining happiness and the life that you want.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Regina, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This has been a real fun conversation. I think it's been the most enlightening, open one that I've had on all the podcasts that I've done this year so far. So, and it's been a lot. So thank you so much for the great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. That honestly means a lot as a host to hear. I'm going to stop the recording. A big thank you goes out to Regina for coming on the show. I really appreciate how open and honest she was willing to be with us about some of the difficult times in her life. And I hope that hearing her and hearing her success in spite of the difficult times that she faced has served as a bit of inspiration for yourself, as it has done for me. Advanced Conversational Hypnosis, very fascinating stuff. I appreciate the speed at which it's purported to work and the efficiency in which it gets to the root of someone's core issues and core problems just through conversation alone. I think a lot more people could be more effective with their conversation and conscious of the words that are being used by themselves or their conversational partners. Very fascinating stuff. So be sure to check out her links in the description to see more of her content. Really appreciate the support. Make sure you're connected with myself on social medias to see clips that get made up from the show. As always, you can check out zachthehealthking.com to see my assorted links and connect on different socials. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Plenty more episodes coming your way. You're listening to the Health King's Court. Ancient wisdom, modern health.